All right, well, welcome to this third video. This one is going to be Tulsi Gabbard against Donald Trump. So far, we've done hypothetical scenarios featuring Kamala Harris being the Democratic nominee, as well as Elizabeth Warren being the nominee. This one is going to be Tulsi Gabbard. She, of course, represents the 2nd District down here in Hawaii. She's already announced her candidacy for president. So let's get to it, as we always do. 50 states plus D.C. We're going to go west to east, starting up here in Washington State. Democrats have shown an ability to elect very liberal candidates up here in Washington. Jay Inslee, the governor there, has worked very hard to tackle climate change issues. Maria Cantwell and Patty Murray are also very popular up in this part of the state, up in the Seattle area. So I think Tulsi Gabbard, even though she's not the most well-known candidate and is very, very far to the left, I think Washington State is hers for the taking. Oregon, pretty similar, even though it might be slightly more conservative, especially in the eastern portions of the state. Oregon should be for Tulsi Gabbard. California, just until Republicans show an ability to win statewide elections here, especially in presidential elections, I bet Tulsi Gabbard wins there pretty easily. Nevada now has shown a dramatic ability to elect female candidates across the entire state. It's the first state in the history of the country to have the majority of women in the state legislature. So that combined with both senators being women, they've shown that they're voting for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 general election. Nevada should be very blue. This entire portion of the country, you have 2 female senators in California, as we just talked about, all the that presence in Nevada, female governor in Oregon, and both senators in Washington are female. Idaho. We talked about in the last video how Democrats are beginning to see some positive signs in Idaho, given the fact that Boise has grown a lot. They have a Democratic mayor in Boise, but not in a general election, just too much ground to make up. Utah, even though Democrats did manage to get Mia Love ousted from Congress, they're still making baby steps in Utah. Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema was a bit of a surprise down here in Arizona. Of course, she replaces John Kyle, who ultimately is replacing John McCain. But in a general election, I still think Arizona goes for Donald Trump again. This will probably be pretty close. Probably Tulsi Gabbard, or really any Democrat, can probably get north of 45% in Arizona. But for now, it's still going to stay with the Republicans. Now in Montana, I think if you're going to get elected as a Democrat in Montana, you have to be pretty moderate. That is, of course, what Steve Bullock and John Tester have successfully been able to do, although I don't think too many independents or Republican voters in Montana are going to be willing to cross over to the other side for someone who's as far to the left as Tulsi Gabbard is. So Montana's going to go red. Wyoming, nothing to discuss there. Colorado, pretty blue at this point. Cory Gardner faces a very, very, very uphill battle for re-election. He, if I had to bet right now, will probably lose his re-election. So Colorado should go blue. Mexico, same thing. Martin Heinrich, Tom Udall, very popular senators there. They did flip the governorship there. Michelle Grisham, now the governor. So New Mexico should be in the Democrats' column going forward. Now into the Plain States. North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp winning there, but she did just lose re-election. North Dakota still, because it's so unpopulated, should still be pretty comfortable for the Republicans. South Dakota, I mean, you can't just completely discard South Dakota quite yet. Democrats have had a senator there recently. They almost managed, they came pretty close in the gubernatorial race. The final tally was just 53-47 for Kristi Noem, now the governor. But again, in a general, shouldn't be too hard. Nebraska, thoroughly Republican state, and that one district, the 2nd district, even though you may give that to a more established Democrat, Tulsi Gabbard is not well known enough to flip enough votes in the Omaha and Lincoln area. Kansas did show an ability to elect a female in that they did get Laura Kelly involved and got her elected as the governor there, upsetting Chris Kobach. But again, in a general election, should go red. Nothing to discuss really in Oklahoma. Texas, if you're going to get a Democrat elected in Texas, even though Beto O'Rourke was pretty liberal and pretty far to the left on many issues, he's still, a white male, which is basically the only way right now that you're going to get elected to a statewide seat in Texas. So Tulsi Gabbard probably doesn't have too much of an opportunity there in Texas. They could get above 40% in the state, considering Lupe Valdez, a Democratic nominee for the governorship there, did get around 43% of the vote, as did Hillary Clinton, but for now, Texas is still going to go red. Minnesota, female candidates have done very well up there. Both senators, Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, are Democratic. They got Tim Walz elected as well. That's a good sign for Democrats, considering Minnesota was pretty close in the 2016 general, so Minnesota's going to go blue. Now, Iowa, Joni Ernst, one of the few female Republican senators out there, so she, should be able to sway enough female votes in the state of Iowa. Democrats do have 3 of the 4 House seats in Iowa, and of course the other one is belonging to Steve King, who probably doesn't have too much time left in Congress. But for now, Iowa, unless there's a polling data that suggests otherwise, again, just not enough of an establishment candidate that is Tulsi Gabbard. I'm going to give Iowa to Donald Trump. Of course, Tulsi Gabbard is the first over 100 in this model, 104.95 currently the tally. Again, you need 270 to win. In Missouri, of course, Claire McCaskill did get herself elected to Missouri as the senator. Kansas City and St. Louis. St. Louis is quietly one of the most liberal areas right now in the entire country, but other than that, there's just not enough to get someone as unknown as Tulsi Gabbard elected there. Arkansas, nothing to discuss there, really. Very, very reliably red state. In Louisiana, New Orleans and Baton Rouge are enough to make Republicans have to pay attention to this state down here, but there's just too much else going on in the rural areas and suburban areas of Louisiana to make it too concerning. Mary Landrieu, of course, she was able to get elected. And right now, there is a Democratic governor there, John Bel Edwards, but for now, I'm going to give that to Donald Trump again. In Wisconsin, this, of course, was a state that Donald Trump won very, very narrowly. Tammy Baldwin is very popular there. She won re-election very easily. Of course, they did flip the governorship here, the Democrats. Tony Evers winning against Scott Walker. But again, you have to be a very, very well-known and very established challenger here if you're going to win in this part of the country in the Midwest. So I'm going to give this to Donald Trump. That's a big, big retention for him. So far, in this model, he has not lost one state that he managed to win in 2016. Now, in Illinois, Mark Kirk was able to win as the senator here for the Republicans. But again, that was a bit of an aberration. I think Illinois should still go blue for the Democrats. That's 20 electoral votes for Tulsi Gabbard. Let's go down here to Mississippi. Mike Espy, the Democrat, came pretty close to defeating Cindy Hyde-Smith. The final tally was 54 to 46. But in a general election, Tulsi Gabbard is way too far to the left right now for Mississippi. Again, Tulsi Gabbard, her big issues, climate change, raising the minimum wage, it's just not enough to get some independence in the Mississippi area. And again, in this part of the country, there just aren't that many independent voters. Alabama, basically the same kind of. Mississippi and Alabama might as well just be one big giant state. Doug Jones is probably going to lose his re-election bid in 2020. So for now, Tulsi Gabbard may not even get into the 40% range in Alabama. In Tennessee, similar scenario. It's seen a big shift to the right in recent years. Phil Bredesen, a very, very well-liked Democrat in the state of Tennessee, was not able to come even close against Marsha Blackburn. I'm going to give Tennessee to the Republicans. Kentucky could be a target for the Democrats, given the fact that Mitch McConnell is very unpopular in his home state. But in a general election, Lexington and Louisville are just not going to be enough to flip it from red to blue. Indiana, the difference here is just going to continue to be Mike Pence. Democrats, Obama did win the state of Indiana one time, and of course it did get Joe Donnelly elected there, but Mike Pence is going to make all the difference there in Indiana. Now in Michigan, this is the state that Democrats have to target because even though they lost Michigan very, very closely in the 2016 election, they saw a lot of good signs there, and that Debbie Stabenow was able to win re-election there in the Senate, and they did flip the governorship there. Gretchen Whitmer winning the governor's mansion there. But again, Tulsi Gabbard is just a little too unknown right now, and unless there's like, in the previous two videos, I gave the state of Michigan both to Elizabeth Warren and to Kamala Harris, but I'm not going to be able to do that this time because I think Tulsi Gabbard just faces too uphill a battle right now. She has to focus on the most blue states in the entire country. In Michigan, although it is very blue leaning, Democrats have both senators and the governor there. It's just not going to be enough. I think in a statewide, I think Donald Trump could hang on there, and that is going to be a huge retention for him because Wisconsin and Michigan were two of the three states that really put him over the top. Let's come down south to Florida. Florida is shifting to the right, kind of similarly to Tennessee. They unseated longtime Democratic Senator Bill Nelson down here. And the fact that they managed to replace Rick Scott, who, of course, won that Senate seat in the governor's mansion, with Ron DeSantis, who's a very similar type of candidate to Donald Trump, there's no indication that Tulsi Gabbard could win down here in Florida. It would still be pretty close considering the urban areas of Florida are pretty liberal: Miami, Tampa Bay, Orlando, Tallahassee, although the Jacksonville area is pretty conservative. And then, of course, the Panhandle would put Donald Trump over the top. In Georgia, Democrats did get pretty close down here in the gubernatorial election, and they did with a minority. Of course, it was an African-American woman who just delivered the Democratic response to the State of the Union. So that is a good sign for Democrats in Georgia. That, of course, the Atlanta area is very, very blue. Macon, Savannah, Athens, of course, are all also blue. Given the fact that Donald Trump won it and Stacey Abrams couldn't, Tulsi Gabbard, again, just not well known enough, and now Donald Trump only needs 35 more, and he's over the finish line. South Carolina, same thing. Democrats have a good presence there in Charleston, and they came close to defeating Henry McMaster, but again, in a general, it's not going to be enough. In North Carolina, Hillary Clinton came pretty close. Of course, Democrats managed to get Roy Cooper, who's a pretty popular governor there, elected. And they've also gotten Kay Hagan and John Edwards elected to the Senate there, and Obama won it one of his 2 times. So the Democrats have had a pretty good ability to get Democrats elected to statewide races in North Carolina. But Tulsi Gabbard, again, as I keep reiterating, in states like Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, and Texas is just not popular enough right now, given the fact that she's all the way on the other side of the country, on the other side of the ocean, for that matter, in Hawaii. So I'm going to give this one to Donald Trump. In Virginia, this is probably going to go blue, but it's going to be close, given the fact that Ralph Northam has gotten himself in a lot of trouble there, and there are a lot of very rural areas and Republican areas of Virginia. But I'm just not quite sold yet on this one going red in a general election. Maybe in a gubernatorial race, but not in a general. I think Virginia will stay blue for this one. West Virginia, not a chance there for Tulsi Gabbard. Democrats Joe Manchin is the Democratic senator from there, but he is extremely, by far, the most moderate Democrat in the entire United States Senate, and Tulsi Gabbard could not be further to the left of Joe Manchin. So that's not going to be a problem for Donald Trump. He only needs 6 more, and he's over the finish line. Ohio, Cleveland, Akron, Cincinnati, they will go blue, and they will vote for Tulsi Gabbard, but otherwise, Mike DeWine winning the governor's mansion there, even though Sherrod Brown won re-election in Ohio, I just don't think this is going to be enough, and with that, I'm going to give this entire election to Donald Trump. In this model, he wins re-election, and so far he has not lost one state that he won in the 2016 election. Let's keep going here. Maryland should go blue. Baltimore, one of the most liberal areas in the entire country, even though they have Larry Hogan, the Republican governor there. Delaware, same thing, very blue state. New Jersey probably will go blue, even though they got Chris Christie elected governor there. 14 will go to Tulsi Gabbard. Pennsylvania, Donald Trump won it, of course, and even though Tom Wolf and Bob Casey both won re-election here, I think Pennsylvania will stay red. Even though Philadelphia is right up there with Baltimore, New York, and a couple other cities across the country as the most liberal areas across the United States, Tulsi Gabbard is not just her, unpopularity, and just too many voters are not familiar enough with her. I'm going to give that to Donald Trump. 29 electoral votes in New York, Manhattan, and the boroughs, and plus all these other urban areas in New York. Probably too much for Trump still. It's kind of still baby steps in New York for Republicans. They can get some representatives elected there, and they've come close in recent elections in the gubernatorial races, but general election, this is not going to be a problem for Democrats. Connecticut, same thing. Rhode Island, same thing. Massachusetts, especially if Tulsi Gabbard says she was the nominee were to make Elizabeth Warren potentially her running mate, Massachusetts would go blue. Let's get that corrected. There we go. Vermont, liberal stronghold, that will go blue. New Hampshire, very conservative for this part of the country. And again, Tulsi Gabbard, very, very far to the left. There are a lot of independents in the state of New Hampshire. I'm giving that to Donald Trump. And then in Maine, I think Democrats can get Maine, but only 3 out of the 4. I think Donald Trump will be able to handle getting one of these back in the rural areas of Maine. So that's going to go for him. Before we forget, down here, Alaska. It's not going to go blue this time around. Again, Dan Sullivan, Lisa Murkowski, Mike Dunleavy, all pretty popular in the state of Alaska. And, of course, Hawaii, this is going to be the easiest win of Tulsi Gabbard's career. So that's going to be another 4 for her. And then Washington, D.C., of course, is probably the most liberal city in the United States. That's going to go blue. So with that, I've got Donald Trump winning re-election, 311 to 227. And in this model, I've got him not losing one state that he won in the 2016 election, and in fact, even picking up the state of New Hampshire. And this is, in fact, an even less close election than the one we saw between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. So thanks again for watching. We got plenty more videos to get through, but for now, again, Donald Trump defeats Tulsi Gabbard 311 to 227.